Cowboy Bebop, a show that I doubt really needs any sort of introduction, a cult classic, originally airing in the early 90s, gaining popularity both inside and outside the anime community. It's an early example of anime breaking into a more mainstream audience, something that's very common now, but back then it was practically unheard of. But why am I telling you this? Well, as I'm sure a large portion of you already know, recently, as of a couple months ago, Netflix dropped a live-action remake, and as I'm sure you can imagine with the way these things go, the entire anime community went absolutely apeshit. But there didn't really seem to be a clear consensus on what people thought about the show. Sure, a large number of people really didn't like it, but I also saw a similar amount of people defending it. Now, after seeing this unfold firsthand, I just knew I had to see the show for myself and make a video on it. But before we get into that, make sure you subscribe to the channel. I make a new video every couple of weeks, and subscribing is greatly appreciated. Now, I don't want to spoil my opinion, but as you could probably tell by the title of this video, I really didn't like this show, and for that reason, I'm going to rate it a 0 out of 10. The show's shit. Goodbye. Okay. My actual take is a little bit more nuanced, but only a little. I may not like this show, but I don't think it's anywhere near as bad as some people make it out to be. There are some parts I actually enjoyed. They may be few and far between, but they still count. My main grievance lies with the changes made to this story. It honestly feels like someone saw the anime as popular and thought to themselves, hey, we can turn that into live action, without understanding what made the original show so great in the first place. So instead of getting something new and innovative, we just get an incredibly watered down version of an already great show. As I said before, the plot of the show is really the only thing I took issue with. Sure, other parts weren't exactly great, but they didn't seem to bother me as much as they did other people, and in comparison, it's nowhere near as bad. Compared to its animated counterpart, the live action story is fundamentally different, only really borrowing the basic structure from the original, and aside from certain characters and events, everything else has either been rearranged or rewritten to fit the new story. Where the original would have more isolated episodes with their own stories, the live action takes more of a linear approach, connecting all the episodes to each other, focusing more on Spike and his relationship to the Syndicate, which in itself is a pretty good idea, because aside from a few episodes in the anime, we never really learnt a lot about the Syndicate, but unfortunately the execution is where this idea falls flat. So let's talk about it. From this point on, I'm going to be talking about spoilers, so skip to this point in the video if you don't want to be spoiled. Like the original series, the live action follows the story of Spike, Jet, and Faye, 3 bounty hunters, with more of a focus on Spike and his history with the Syndicate, which we'll talk about first. Orphaned on Mars and taken in by the Syndicate, Spike would eventually grow up and join them, along with his best friend Vicious, son of one of the Syndicate leaders, and most notably, the guy who took Spike in. Vicious, played by Alex Hustle, has gone through quite a lot of changes compared to his animated counterpart, and to be honest, they're for the worse. In the original show, Vicious was this cold, calculated killer who would do anything to get his way, but now that they've rewritten him, he's basically now just this glorified man-child who can't do anything right. So back to the story. So after Vicious screws up a mission, Spike is sent to kill him, but because Spike feels he owes Vicious for what he did, he opts to do the next best thing, and run away together with Vicious's girlfriend Julia to start a new life with her. The Syndicate, catching word of this, offers Vicious a chance to redeem himself by killing Spike. So he confronts Spike, and after a battle that results in Spike getting shot and falling into the water, he is presumed dead. The story takes place years after this. Spike has now gone into hiding and become a bounty hunter alongside Jet, with Faye joining the crew shortly after. But after a run-in with a few Syndicate members, Vicious is able to quickly learn about Spike's survival and sends some assassins to go deal with him. Vicious, now a high-ranking lieutenant in the Syndicate and married to Julia, now has other problems. After the elders of the Syndicate find out he was selling drugs without their permission, they break into his house and ask him to shoot Julia, which he does, but the gun wasn't loaded, and he is warned that if he does it again, next time it won't be fake. Both of them clearly upset. They begin plotting a plan to kill the elders and take control of the Syndicate for themselves, and planning to meet up with the other lieutenants in the Syndicate in order to get their help. Honestly, this part is really stupid as it introduces a whole bunch of characters who quickly die soon after, so I'm not really going to go into detail of what happens here, but they agree to Vicious's plan and devise a plan to take control. But during this, Julia, understandably upset that Vicious would kill her given the chance, has been meeting with the lieutenants herself to devise her own plan. Instead of having the other lieutenants kill the elders, she wants them to kill Vicious instead. So the time comes, and this plan obviously fails. With Vicious seeing the betrayal ahead of time, he is able to escape his fate and kill both the elders and the lieutenants that tried to betray him, now making him the leader of the Syndicate.
Hey, fuck you!
But before we get into that, I want to talk about the other 2 main characters, Jet and Faye, and I want to use them as examples of what to do and what not to do when you rewrite a character. When you're rewriting a character, there needs to be a reason for every little change. When you make a change, there needs to be a purpose to it, and it has to add to the previously known character, rather than take away from them. Jet in the live action series is the perfect example of this. All of his new additions to his character add to the story in one way or another, and the addition of his daughter was a great idea. It gives you a genuine reason to care about his character and what happens to him. Now let's contrast that with Faye's changes. Faye has essentially been stripped down from everything that made her interesting from the original series. Almost nothing about the main story of the show relates to her in any sort of way, and her only purpose is to be the comedic relief, and well, let's just say she's not very funny. Back to the main story. With Vicious now the head of the syndicate, he confronts Julia about her plan to kill him, to which he is told that she doesn't love him anymore and she loves Spike, causing Vicious to go absolutely mental and imprison her. He then puts all of his efforts into finally taking Spike out. Capturing Jet's daughter, Vicious uses her as bait to lure Spike in, resulting in a showdown. During this, with the help of one of the guards, Julia is able to escape and makes her way to Spike. As she arrives, Spike has just defeated Vicious, and after seeing this, she confronts Spike and tells him that the only way for them to be together is for Spike to kill Vicious and for them to then become the new leaders of the syndicate. Honestly, this entire scene felt really cheap and out of nowhere. I know they were trying to foreshadow this with her plotting to kill Vicious, but it still felt like it needed a little bit more build up than what it had already. Spike saying no gets shot in the chest by Julia, with Julia running off and kidnapping Vicious, using him to become the new leader of the syndicate. Jet, understandably upset about his daughter getting kidnapped, tells Spike that if he ever sees him again, he will kill him, causing the entire crew to break up, and that is the end of the series. Now, I understand, when converting a show over to live action, some changes have to be made, but I really don't know what they were thinking of this. It's been changed to a point where it's almost completely unrecognizable from what it's basing itself off, and if it didn't have the name Bebop or any of the characters associated with it, you could totally pass it off as a completely different show. The live action is very fan servicey. No, not that kind of fan service, you degenerate. I'm referring to the constant references and callbacks to the original show. Remember this cool scene from the anime? Isn't it so cool that we did it in live action? Which in itself isn't really a problem, but instead of making me like the show more, it just made me want to go back and watch the original. After looking at the reviews, there seem to be quite a lot of mixed feelings about this show. There is some part of me, deep down, that really enjoys it, and there genuinely are some things to like about it. That's why I'm kinda sad to see that the second season got cancelled. Despite what a lot of people say, Cowboy Bebop is probably the perfect show to remake into live action. Sure, it may lose some of its charm, but I do think there are genuinely things to be gained when converting it. And I'd be lying if I told you if my rating wasn't the least bit affected by my love for the original show. To put it simply, the live action is an inferior copy to the original in almost every single way. And for that reason, I'm going to rate Cowboy Bebop live action a 4 out of 10. Alright, that's the end of the video. Like it if you like it, dislike it if you don't, and I am out.